Gorvidal said, problem with America is that people who should be reading books are writing them. I'll be back shortly. This is a copy of the money that Kennedy put out that said on it, United States of America. I will leave it here if you want to come and look at it. And he put out $5 billion, which was enough. That in itself was enough to get him killed. But it wasn't just that. Okay? So, let's see. Oh, you know what? I'll just pass these around. This is what Jefferson said about the bankers. And Jefferson and Henry Ford. Oh, I don't know if they'll stand up. Here. No, they won't. So just pass them around. They're very interesting. They knew what people today do not know. And so now the first thing, I went out last weekend. Well, it was actually, was it Tuesday or Friday? This week passed, no, it was a Tuesday night. I went to Beit Zatoun. How many here have ever been to Beit Zatoun? Markham, it's called the House of Olives, and that's the word in Arabic, Beit Zatoun. And I went to see an old friend of mine, Michelle Chizadovsky. He has a very popular website, I'm sure you've all seen it. He's a retired professor of economics at Ottawa University. And of course, I hadn't seen him in about 15 years. We're both members of Cummer, and we went to a lot of the meetings in Toronto. And he used to talk quite plainly. He used to talk like I'm speaking to you. So I thought, okay, I've got to go see him. I haven't seen him in all this time. It'll be nice. We'll go out for a couple of drinks, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So when I got there at Beit Zatoun, and I went in the front door, I was ready to go right back home. I saw these two people taking the money. Was anyone there last Tuesday? Okay. I saw the two people taking the money, and I thought, you have been taken over. So I gave the $10 and went in. The place was mobbed. Not a big room, maybe about this size, but people were spilling over, standing room only. And I thought, I handed over the money and I said to these two, because I know who they are from a long time ago, and because they go everywhere to see who's saying anything they don't approve of, I'll just say that. And I walked up to them and I said, hi, how are you? I'm in my 16th year, isn't that great? And what I got was, so anyway, I went and I didn't have a seat, I was standing, and then a pupil of mine from a few years ago, I saw this hand go up, and one of the shrinks that used to come to the class, both psychiatrists, they came to the mind control things because they agreed with it all. Anyway, saved a seat. He said, I actually went and got a chair so you could sit up here. So I went and sat with him, but Michelle Chizadovsky just skirted around the main subject. So then there was a little woman in red in the front row, naive little girl, and a question answer, and she said to him, but she said, all this talk about the CIA's doing this, the CIA's doing that, she said, but I saw on the net that that was Israel's plan to get all that land and have a greater Israel. And she said, I saw that. Why didn't you mention that tonight? And I thought, okay, no one was expecting that. So he said, he skirted around that one, and he said, well, one of the remarks he said was this. He said, Israel has no power. It can't do anything without the US. And I thought, okay, that gives me my next question to you. So when I got up in the lineup for the questions, I come up to the guy who manages the place. I usually get one question when I go to other things. So he comes up to me and he said, "Oh, you don't get a question tonight." I said, "Oh, why not?" He said, "Well, you always get lots of questions." And I said, "Well, I have one question at any meeting I come to here. I get my allotted one question." But I said, "I've known this man 20 years, and I don't get a question." So he said, "Well, if you do a question, it has to be just the one question." So I thought, okay, I'll word this very carefully. So I said, my question was, I said, "Michelle, it's so nice to see you again after all these years." And the two that were managing everything in the back, their eyes were, "She knows him?" You know, you could tell what they're thinking. So anyway, I said, "I have a question that a lot of people would like to know." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Does it have any influence on the U.S. foreign policy that at least half the people in government have dual citizenships in Israel?" So I was not answered in a direct way. I was given the same thing again about, well, they don't have that much power and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, "Do they? I didn't know that."
Oh.
And I thought, Michelle Chazadovsky, how dare you pull that on me? I know you. So when I went home, I thought, oh my God, this dear friend of mine is completely being managed by...
He's been in the public eye for too long, and he cannot be tolerated any longer.
Oh, I have no idea when, the reins were taken over. No idea, because I haven't seen him in a long time. I know him through CUMMER, the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform. And of course, we were both at that meeting when a woman came along to join, and we started talking about the banks. That's what we're about. And she said, "You can't talk about the banks here. That's anti-Semitic." I said, "Wait a minute, the guy running our group is a Jew. What does that make him?" You know, like he's about 101 now, Bill Krim. He's run the group for years. And there she is telling us we mustn't discuss the banks. So he was there, I was there, we went to all the meetings, the annual meetings and whatever. And so that's how well I know him. So I went up to him at the end, I had a document for him, and I said, "When are you leaving?" He said, I'm leaving early in the morning. And I knew what he meant. He meant he's not going anywhere after the meeting. He's going to be with the group until he leaves early in the morning. So I said, "Okay, my number's in there, give me a call the next time you're back in Toronto."
I thought he was doing great until you asked that question of him. Once you asked that question, then he's not acknowledging the elephant in the room. Once you don't acknowledge the elephant in the room, then everything he said was sort of, goes downhill from there.
So I thought, well, I have to ask him. I want to see just how bad it is, okay? So that was Tuesday night. So, and of course, and the next one I hear on the radio was McCallum. He's head of immigration now. Now because of Paris, oh, maybe we better not let them in. The usual reaction, okay? And I'm listening to him and I thought, McCallum, he was head of the Royal Bank at one point, and back about 15 years ago, I was on that show Counterspin having a debate with him over the banks and the money, and Avi Lewis, who was in charge of it at the time, promised everybody, "We're going to do a program all on the Bank of Canada." Yes, we are. And then one of my students came over to me and he said, "You can't believe what I just heard McCallum ask Avi." And I said, "What?" And he said, McCallum goes up to him and says, you're not really going to do a show on the Bank of Canada, are you? Like that. Well, the show never came about. So it's all fits in with tonight and why so many presidents have been killed. It's all about who's going to print the money, the country at no interest, or the bankers at interest. That's what the whole war, the whole fighting, the wars, that's what it's all about. That is the real war. Are the citizens going to print the money, or are the bankers? And so right now the whole globe is mortgaged to the hilt. The whole globe is mortgaged. So they can destroy any country they want just by saying, well, we're not giving them any credit. But they should be like Iceland, who turfed them all out. Hungary got rid of the IMF. You've got to have some people who can stand up and say, look, we don't need your phony money. We can print our own. Why should we pay you interest for numbers? Numbers, you pay $500 for some paper, you print, and whether the bill says $5 or 5,000 or 5 billion, we pay interest on the numbers they print. What a scam. They're just a glorified Xerox company. Please, people, catch on. And they're bleeding the whole planet dry. Parasites, okay? And if you want a really good book on this, written by a Canadian, if you can get it, it's called The Babylonian Woe. Okay? Oh, look, there's some chalk. I can't believe it. Okay. The Babylonian Woe by David Astle. Because it comes from way back then. Okay? Excellent book. Canadian, David Astle. I've got it. Please try and get it somewhere. Everybody needs to read that. It all comes back to the money. That's why all the assassinations were taking place. Now, I heard a thing on the drones on, I think this was CBC, when I listened to the news straight from Europe, because I go to sleep late, from 1 to 5, you can get like news directly from Holland, directly from France, directly from Australia, and they were saying the drones now have such a bad name. I mean, when they say this is like precise, oh please, not unless you wanted to kill the whole group, precise. And so the motto that the drone people use is this: mow the grass before it grows. I've heard that motto before. Oh yes, I have. And it's said a lot in Israel-Palestine. I saw some wonderful t-shirts there at one point. Showed an Arab woman pregnant, target on the belly, and it said, 1 shot, 2 dead. And they were wearing these. So the motto is, cut the grass before it grows. And so on the veterans, 22 veterans kill themselves every day. They are back so sick with the DU, the cancer, they give it to their family, their children are born deformed, yes. 22 every day kill themselves, nobody says a word about it. And of course, all this stuff about everyone's, got some little goddamn thing in their hand, they're poking or listening, or, everybody's involved. That is all about, not only is it harmful to your brain and your health, but what it's about is to stop actual human interaction. To give people the illusion, yes, I'm all into communications, and meantime, if they lose this little box, they're so addicted, that they would need to go on some kind of medication for, it's the cell. So like, I just call them cellaholics, okay? But that's to replace actual masses getting together and talking together. That's a good replacement for that.
The disorder in the latest DSM was internet addiction disorder. That's what
What?
they call it. Internet addiction disorder.
Oh, is that what it's called? Oh, who's named it? The same
That's
people?
Yeah, Skytree. For DSM.
A cellulaholic is fine for me. Okay. So they'll have to go to the AA, whatever it is. I'm going to AA and communications. I can't stop my fingers. Okay. So this is what they said about Kennedy. Oh, character assassination. I thought I gotta hear this. He took drugs, you know. You people heard that. He took drugs, yes, because when he was managing that submarine, he got a very bad back injury. Painkillers is what he took. How could he have done what he did if he was out of it, you know, every day on some recreational drug? He was in a lot of pain because he had a back injury. It was talked about back then at the time. I saw him, I sat with my 6-month-old watching the whole thing live on TV. Okay? I saw him shot. I saw him go backwards. I saw her, I think she was gathering brains off her skirt, whatever, and then trying to get out of the car. I saw that. It was live. They couldn't have stopped that. Not that day. You saw what happened. And I remember every bit of it. So the things they did with the film, the Zapruder film, how many times that film was edited, re-edited. Oh, let's not do this. Let's show that. Come on. Absolutely worthless. Unless you were watching it that day, you did not. You were not told the truth about what happened physically. And they went dead against physics. I mean, these people think nobody knows anything. The bullet that was, oh, it went here, then it zagged over here, then it zagged, and 3 or 4 zigzags. Right, okay. Are people that stupid? In the JFK movie, but you have to remember, the guy who produced Oliver, what's his name again? Stone. Oliver Stone's version JFK was Arnon Milchan. Arnon Milchan has been the most popular and biggest Israeli arms dealer for the last 40 years. He made sure nothing was said about that in the film. So much for the film,
Sydney,
okay?
the film is on, you can get it on the internet. You see his head fly back to the left, and you see the
That's right.
Pardon me?
Well, this guy last night said no.
That's
Well, I know that.
It's
Listen.
available on the net.
That's right, but people listening who haven't got time to surf the net or don't even know how, no, that didn't happen. No, he didn't, the back of his head was not blown out. He wasn't hit. This came out years ago. This guy was already in jail for another murder. He didn't do this to get out, to get a deal. He was going to be there till he died. So at some point, he decided he would tell them that he was the shooter that got the head shot right in the middle of it. You might even be able to get that if you ask for it. So yes. So, and he was a womanizer. Oh, wait a minute. Wasn't dear old Billy Bob the biggest womanizer? Wasn't he sued by all kinds of women for feeling them up, raping them, doing... Billy Bob Clinton. Okay? That's what I call him. He had so many women lined up suing him. Did Kennedy? No. What was they didn't like about Kennedy was the women were throwing themselves at his feet. Come on, do something with me. I mean, he had no problem. No woman was going to sue Kennedy. Anyway, he was a womanizer. If he had wanted to, he could have had a different woman every single night, okay? They would have been lined up outside the White House. I'm next, I'm tomorrow, okay? That's how it would have been. So yes, he did have well, the Marilyn Monroe thing, we don't know how much of that is true, okay? And even if he had a date with her or whatever, Kennedy was an intellectual, okay? So a lot of men, when it comes to the popular women of the hour, he was a normal guy, all right? But he also had a lot of high ideals, and he tried to work them into his presidency. So, I mean, if he'd been the other way, they would have complained about that. Well, there was something wrong with him. He wasn't interested in women at all. You know, there's always going to be something, okay? So, then he said this. Somebody asked him something about what he was doing, not with the money, but with the Bay of Pigs and all that. So this is this guy's response. All the presidents knew that being in the Oval Office alone would be dangerous to them, okay? That was the answer to that. So he really didn't do anything outstanding. Well, I also was watching the day that he said to Russia, get your missiles off Cuba. I mean this. And we were all holding our breath. But that's what he did. So they took them off. And after that, he and Khrushchev talked together and they both signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. He made friends with Khrushchev. Oh, what happened to the Cold War? I don't know. Now he's talking to Khrushchev, something else these kind of people don't want. What's this going to do to the weapons? Everybody that's into the Cold War, what's going to happen? Okay, before I faint, can you just open that window? Can you open that window? Thanks. And they've got the heat on full tilt. So that was another thing. So his answer to that was, and then he said, he opened himself to blackmail. And I said, what do you mean blackmail? He said, well, he made these bad decisions. He had indiscretions. Wait a minute. It's like today. Can you blackmail anybody over their indiscretions, their affairs, their anything to do with their sex life? Please. Nobody was going to blackmail him either. Oh, you're blackmailing him? Am I going to see pictures of me on the news? At the time he went out with me? That's how it would have been. You can't blackmail somebody when the rest of the world doesn't care. And nowadays, they don't care. You know, people go on, what is it, Facebook or whatever, for their 15 minutes of fame. And sometimes, you know, oh, I'll do a nude picture of me, or I'll send something that, you know, I'm going to get my fame for 15 minutes. He was not open to blackmail. He didn't care. Nobody else cared, especially not the women. Oh yeah, that was me. Is that a good picture of me? Okay, that's how it would have been. So, and then this guy said this. I don't know how old he was. He probably wasn't even alive when Kennedy was shot. Who knows how old he was? He said, but before I had a chance to get my information, quote, the conspiracy theorists took over our history. So it was at this point I thought, if I could just get my hands on this moron. So that was one. And these are his suspects. Now get this. Nothing to do with my list. The mafia, maybe. Castro, definitely not. Okay? Russia, no, not after the missile crisis. The Ku Klux Klan. Because he encouraged, you know, the integration of civil rights. And the Teamsters Union. What? These are the enemies of Kennedy? You twit, okay? Please don't buy this ridiculous book. So he and Khrushchev got to be friends. And then, when he said it was never a conspiracy, nobody ever called it yes, they did. When they had the second commission, the one that was demanded secondly, that was the one that said yes. We have decided it was a conspiracy. Yes, they did. The second one. So they admitted that, so there's another, he was just wrong, wrong, wrong. Now, when he was talking about Oswald, now here's where he really gives himself away, this creep. He says, I'm quoting him, Oswald was a troubled young man. Every lone assassin has a troubled past. Something, they're always troubled, okay? So that was his remark on Oswald, and he said Oswald did it. Oswald did it. In spite of all the stuff, the evidence that's come out against that over the years with people with credentials, okay? So Oswald was not a troubled young man. Oswald went to Russia posing as a defector for the United States. Okay, got me? He went there posing as a defector to find out what he could find out. He was working for the CIA, whatever. He got married to a Russian woman, they had a child, they came back with him. Now, supposedly, he's a defector, he's gone to Russia. He's there for quite a while. Then he comes back to the USA. Does anyone stop him? No! He comes back with the wife, the kid, he's back, everything is rosy. So what kind of a real defector has that happened to him? I'm going back home now. I told them I didn't want my country anymore. I'm a defector, been in Russia. God knows what I've done. I'm going back home now. Okay, buddy, come on back. That's all right. Nothing was ever said or done that he came back. Of course not. So he wasn't a troubled young man. He was, what, 26 or something like that, the wife, the kid. He's done his stint in Russia, he's home. So then, they want him to snoop around, pretend he's a commie, snoop around, hand out leaflets. They want him to find out what's going on over in Cuba with Castro, what's going on with the Meyer Lansky crowd, who can't wait to get back in, because they turned the place into a charnel house, but they can't wait to get back in. So he is working on that angle, and he is reporting to Bobby. All right? And he said, just before they killed him, he said, I'm the patsy in this one, I'm the patsy. So that's who Oswald was, okay? They didn't make the, they didn't stir, they didn't even ask him, show your ID. Come on back, boy, you've done your job, now you're gonna do some work here. So this idiot, who I say wasn't even born then, is saying all this, they want to set up a completely new story, and if they can't make people forget that this decent man, normal, decent man was killed by certain people, then they're going to make him seem like wasn't such a big deal killing him. He had all these faults. So that, when somebody's dead, that's when they pounce. When Tolkien died, they accused him of being an anti-Semite for his stories. When Joseph Campbell died, the religious, well, history, religion, Joseph Campbell was the person on the globe. And he died, and they said the same thing about him. So as soon as you're dead and you can't defend yourself, this is when all this crap comes out. So I would like to look, if I had gotten to call in, I never look at these numbers, I would have said, well, what are your credentials? What is your background? What credentials do you have to make these statements at this time? I want your book to have a bibliography, and it better be long. Do you think it'll have one? Yeah, right. Okay. That's what I would have asked him. What are your credentials? Who are you to be saying this? So look him up on the net, see what kind of a cornball and what group he belongs to. So His book is entitled A Cruel and Shocking Act, The Secret History of the Kennedy Assassination. Is it Bill Sheenan? Did I get that right? Did anyone write it down? Bill Sheenan or Sheehan or something like that. Don't even bother. Ask to read it before you buy it. It's probably like, you know, big print, 230 page. Read it in an hour and then throw it back. Okay, so what they're doing now is damage control. 50 years, and they're still having to do damage control by assassinating the character of Kennedy. That's what it is now. And all these kids, these people who weren't there at the time, I had my 6-month-old child on my lap, watching it live on television. And then when it happened, I looked out on the street because I was living downtown. Everyone on the street was sobbing. Men, women, everyone, everywhere. So he touched a note with everybody. He was a human guy, yes, he had lots of faults, but they knew he was trying. He was trying to bring the ideals of the fathers of the country home. And that he was the last intellectual president we ever had, and probably the last honest one. So we won't go into Johnson and how he sunk the Liberty. Sink it to the bottom. No, we could go into all of that. So that was a coup. When he was killed, that was a coup. And then Bobby was killed. Come on, how obvious can it be? No, Kennedy was ever going to get to run this country again. And why? Now, I'm going to tell you why. The reasons that they decided he had to go. Okay? Oh, now what is this that Margolis? Margolis said, and I like Margolis. He's lost a couple of jobs because he's too honest. He says here, financial crisis, not armed terrorists, are the greatest threat to U.S. security. Margolis, okay? And they don't like him. Now here were the reasons to kill him. Or do you want me to talk about the way he was shot first, okay? Here we have it. And I don't need to tell you where I got this because I still have friends. And of course back then I had friends in New York. And here's what I've got. Kennedy was shot 4 times from 4 different directions. It was multiple shooters. Kennedy's head looked like a bomb had gone off inside it. He was shot once in the throat and in the back of the head at least. Lee Harvey Oswald could not have done that amount of damage with the weapon that he had. Okay? The group and the conspiracy were, among others, now this is from my people in New York, Lyndon Johnson, Dulles, and the Mafia, and they were helped by the Texas oil men. The Mafia wanted Cuba and the money laundering. The anti-Castro Cubans, the CIA, the Mafia, and Hoover all wanted to stay in power. Okay, Kennedy would not invade Cuba. That was planned before he got in. So when they called him at 3 a.m. in the morning, air cover, where is that? He said, I'm not giving you any. Whoa. And he did not. And so that was a failure, okay? Kennedy wanted the first 10,000 troops out of Vietnam by November '63. After Kennedy's death, McNamara advises Johnson that Kennedy planned to stay in Vietnam. Another big lie, huge lie, okay? McNamara then becomes head of the World Bank, all right? Hoover wanted to stay on. Kennedy would have been re-elected in '64, okay? And we want to go to the rest of it here before I go any further. Here we are. There's a lot of reasons. He would not give Meyer Lansky's invasion of Cuba any air cover. He was ending Vietnam. He told the FBI that he was curbing their power, retiring Hoover, and he got the missiles out of Cuba, which meant he would be elected again. He got the missiles out of Cuba. Not only that, he and Khrushchev together got friendly and signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, okay? He issued $4.5 billion in interest-free money based on silver. Usually, you got about 325,000, even if you got 300 million. He put out $4.5 billion in those. This is the money. It said United States, didn't say Federal Reserve on it. He didn't tell them, he went right by them, okay? Now, the other thing he was doing that nobody knew about, except the people immediate to him, he was having a continual fight to stop Israel from getting a nuclear bomb. Oh yeah, Ben Gurion, got so upset that he resigned because Kennedy was stopping them from getting the bomb. So what would have happened if he had been able to do that? We're the only country over there now who actually have weapons of mass destruction, and they have 250 hydrogen bombs right now, okay? Reagan hated Kennedy, and he resigned because of that. So, and the same group were all involved in the murders of his brother and his son. We'll go into that tonight. John Kennedy Jr. had a magazine called George. Why it was called George, I don't know. But it was an investigative magazine. And he was doing investigations that a lot of people did not like, okay? The one that he had in there was on Rabin's assassination, which was a no-no. He was going to investigate his father's murder, and he was already asked, would he go to the Senate? They came to him. And of course, Hillary, a good old boy in drag, but Hillary at that time would have been up against him for a seat in the Senate. He was a sure bet, and if he'd gotten to the Senate, trust me, he would have gotten to the presidency. He already had an heir. His wife was pregnant, okay? Therefore, the wife had to die with him. So, no Kennedy, not even one unborn, was ever going to be allowed to do what Kennedy had done. None of them. So, if you haven't read the best book on it, the best book on this, and I think it could even be banned here, the best book on this is called Final Judgment. Okay? And I think, oh, what's his name? Final Judgment. He's with the American Free Press. Does anyone remember the name?
Michael Piper.
Oh, Michael Piper, right. Yeah, Michael Piper, and he actually explains where and how he gets his information. It's the best one ever written of all the 50, 60, I don't know how many. That one, okay? That's got evidence. So if you want to find out about that one, that's the book for you. Now, on your papers here, let's get on with what they found at the hospital, okay? Now, this is from the Spotlight. I'm just reading this little cutout bit. Please get all those because they're all archives. This is from the Spotlight at the time and afterwards. This is very interesting and also ironic. Since you have pointed out, this is in the middle of an interview, since you have pointed out that when Oliver Stone made the movie about Garrison, remember, he was a lawyer, Garrison, he went after Clay Shaw, okay? At Garrison, he steered clear of any of the details that you've assembled, now he's talking to Piper, assembled relating to the Israeli connection. This is now, Piper is coming back. That is another story in itself. Inasmuch as the executive producer of Stone's film, the person who put up the money that made the film possible was Arnon Milchan. Please look this guy up. He's very well known as an arms dealer. He's also a Hollywood producer. He thinks he's another James Bond, but doesn't look nearly as good, I can tell you. Was Arnon Milchan, who was described in The Nation magazine by liberal writer Alexander Cockburn as being Israel's largest arms dealer. That's who produced the Oliver Stone film. I saw it. It was okay. A lot of the information that you know wasn't there, but that's what that's about. So he says here, there's a new book out, Israel and the Bomb, by Avner Cohen, actually another Jewish man, and he has a website of his own on the internet that you can find through the National Security Archive. Just put his name in National Security Archive. And he, now get this, he reproduces a letter that President Kennedy sent to the government of Israel, advising them that in no uncertain terms, U.S. relations with Israel would be jeopardized if Israel did not curtail its nuclear weapons development. So look up this man, okay? This is not a myth. That people say it's a myth. No, he didn't do that. Yes, he did. Okay? So, shot 4 times. They weren't going to let this guy get away. So from 4 different directions, yes, they honed in on him. And this guy here did the center headshot, okay? So, the x-rays were tested. And this is all from people I knew back then, other investigators. The x-rays were tested and were found to be altered because at that point I had 2 young children. I had come back from New York, I'd been married, and so when I was watching this, I was sitting there with a 6-month-old on my lap watching it live, and that's what happened then. So I had to make a bunch of calls. The x-rays were tested and were found to be altered. The hard part is the cover-up. The original x-rays are phony. They wanted to cover up the hole in the back of his head. DC snipers had high velocity weapons. Yes, they did. Here's a quote from one of the doctors. The man lost half his brain in Dealey Plaza. The autopsy was altered and the brain was replaced. Parkland emergency doctor said that the gunshot was to the front of the head. The doctor saw the goddamn, okay? It's in the front, okay, the doctors. It hit the temple at the right, which blasted his brains out the back of his head. The bullet meant that Bush got in, okay? Now, Oswald, here's about Oswald. Oswald, as a CIA informant, was getting $200 a month. He knew Jack Ruby, yes he did. Oswald was a patsy, he was in the lunchroom on the second floor of the book depository 90 seconds after the assassination, okay? He didn't even qualify, no. And now here's what they did do. He was calm, went home on public transit. He did not shoot the police officer Tibbet. Now, I saw a photograph of Tibbet. Tibbet looked enough like Kennedy to be his brother. They needed Tibbet for the brain, the photographs of the head from the side with no hole in the head. That's why Tibbet was needed. And Oswald did not shoot him. I saw the picture of Tibbet. Really, he could have been his brother. And all they needed was a photograph from the side so that you could see, oh look, the back of the head is there. It's still there. So Tibbet, yes, he qualified. He looked almost like him, okay? So Oswald, he did not shoot police officer Tibbet. The cop was shot by 2 persons with automatics, which Oswald did not have. No, he did not, okay? So Jim Garrison was getting to the truth, all right? JFK quotes, now, this is what one of my friends said, it is the most accurate account, even though it is too simple by half. In other words, it has a lot of omissions, okay? Someone impersonated Oswald in Mexico. Now listen, this guy last night, I listened to it long enough. He said, but he was down in Mexico. He was doing this and that. Oswald had somebody who looked almost like him as well. And this was not Oswald in Mexico. No, it was not. Okay? So it was the person who looked a lot like him. And he says here, the name of the guy who looked like Oswald in Mexico, his name was Jim Hicks. Jim Hicks, okay? So if you want to go on the net, look up good old Jim Hicks, okay? He was, it is a conspiracy, so he was one of the little, gophers in the conspiracy. So he was pretending to be Oswald. He was a member of the plot. And one of the aims of the plot was pin the tail on a commie. Let's get a commie. And of course they said Oswald was also a commie, giving out all these, okay? Now about Zapruder. This is very strange about Zapruder. Zapruder had vertigo. Zapruder couldn't go up anywhere high because he had vertigo, okay? Why would he climb a pillar? John Costello, you can look him up, has evidence that the Zapruder film was recreated. The original would have shown the driver bringing the limo to a halt. Okay? To a halt. Kennedy was shot 4 times, Connolly 3 times. The basic raw film was from 3 different films, okay? So there is a video, the Great Zapruder Film Hoax, if you can look it up on the net, and 2 or 3 people who got very good films of that car stopping, well, their cameras were taken away. They never saw them again. Okay? Somebody named Gordon Arnold had his film confiscated, but the Zapruder film got lots of coverage, okay? That's what actually happened, some of the facts that happened on that day. So, this guy, oh, he was in Mexico. Give me a break, you moron. So, nobody has a double? Sure, everybody has a double if they want to find one, okay? So, now, what we want to do here is, let's talk about, because he issued that money, there were two things, okay? Two things that go together. When you're talking about the Fed, he issued money against the Fed. He didn't want Israel to have a bomb. Okay? Who owns Israel? It's his personal property. Begin resigned about the bomb thing, okay? The Fed is part, who owns the Fed? This guy, okay? These two things basically are what got him killed. As other presidents have been killed for the same thing. Only back in those days, for instance, Lincoln, you have that paper. This is what happened back then when Lincoln was killed, okay? The assassination of Lincoln, you've got it. Now, this was the only time they didn't blame it on a nutcase. Got that? They tried to kill Jackson, but Jackson survived in 1835. Jackson survived because the guy came up to him with two guns and they both misfired. So Jackson lived. And Jackson, everybody loved him. Everybody wept. Black people, white people outside the White House, when he left, they all wept. He said, he says on his tombstone, I killed the banks. He said, they tried to, he was called Old Hickory, because hickory's the hardest wood in the world. You can't bend it, you can't break it. And they would go into his office and try and coerce him into doing something. You know, put the money in the central bank. He said, get out of here, you nest of vipers. And what he did was, he took the money out of the private central bank, put it in all the state banks. That was the only time during America that they had a surplus. No debt, a surplus. When they took it away from the goddamn interest-bearing, as he said, vipers. And what he did when he had that huge surplus, he sorted it out among all the states. And he sent them each their share, and he said, do with it what you need to do. So Jackson actually was using Douglas's program, okay? No interest on the money. So that was the only surplus ever. Never been one since. Went back home, and then they all got together and they're saying, is there any way we can get him back for a third term? I mean, the bankers are coming out of the woodwork again. The cockroaches are coming out again. So then, Lincoln, of course, what they did was, the Rothschilds had money invested in the South, the slave economy. So they wanted to back both sides again, have a big civil war. And Lincoln actually went to the banks and he said, well, I need money to pay the army. And they said something like 26%, 32%. He said, oh, screw you, went off. And he created his own money, which they called greenbacks. And they never got to bring them back in, so they saved the government billions. So he got his own money, and they won the war, and then he said to the South, hey, no hard feelings, no, nothing, we're not going to ask you for any money, going to be no reparation, just come back so we can all unite again. I'm not going to charge you with a thing, we'll just get together. Wow, the bankers didn't want that, no. And when he sent, by courier, he sent a note to the Russian Tsar, and as soon as the courier ran into the Tsar, and he said, this is a note from Lincoln, and the Tsar said he can have whatever he wants. The Tsar didn't like the money lenders either. So when they thought that Lincoln, you know, is he going to lose, is he going to win, they sent the Russian Navy. The Russian Navy were all around the American shores. And if Lincoln had looked like he was going to lose, they were going to land. Nobody talks about that. So when the phony commie revolution took place in Russia and was funded by Wall Street to the tune of 50 million, oh yeah, get the book by Sutton, please. And when they got over there, they wiped out the whole family of the Tsar. He'd already abdicated. Kerensky was already starting up the new parliament. They go over, they keep them for 2 years in terror. Every night thinking the next morning they're all going to be killed. Finally they were, because they never forgot that the Tsar was helping Lincoln. It was the Tsar's navy. They will get, even if it takes hundreds of years, okay? So the whole family, even the royal family in England, they wrote to him, Lenin, whatever, and they said, please, just let them go. He's already abdicated. Why are you keeping them? Just let them go. They're not going to take anything with them. Spite, pure spite. Got to teach the world a lesson. So they always kill ants with cannons. Okay, that's what they do. So they wiped out the whole family because they helped Lincoln. So then Booth, I want to read you now. After they caught Booth, and Lincoln was killed, of course, Booth knew the theater inside out. He played there many, many times. He was always saying, I hate Lincoln, you know, I wish I could kill him. So of course they picked the right guy. And he knew the theater inside out. And when they didn't want he and his wife to be able to get out of the box. They were in a box up on the second floor, you would say, and the door was barred, so that no matter what happened, they could not get out. So that's what was done that night. And this is how it ended up. Only time they had a trial. Get this, okay? Look, back then, Toronto mourned Lincoln. The whole world was mourning him. Something had to be done. So they had a trial, okay? At the trial into Lincoln's death in Indianapolis in June 1865. It's very dry. Remember that tomorrow I have the tooth ripped out of my skull. So I have to get prepared for that tonight.
You're not going with the root canal?
I know too much about them.
Good
Not
choice.
good.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Not good. So if I want to later, I'll get an implant or whatever. It's just... So, this is what happened. They had a trial. At the trial, now this is right in your paper. This one here, okay? 100,000 reward. That's big money back then for the murderer when he was still at large, okay? At the trial into Lincoln's death in Indianapolis in '65, some of the people named as directly involved were Lord Palmerston, the British Prime Minister, John Wilkes Booth, Judah P. Benjamin, representative of the London bankers, and Jacob Thompson, a former secretary for the Interior, who withdrew $180,000, this is in 1865, from the Bank of Montreal in Canada to pay for the assassination. Others in the plot were August Belmont, the Rothschild representative in the U.S., Robert Cox, and Clement Clay. Lincoln's $450 million interest-free greenbacks for which he was murdered have saved America billions to date because they were never recalled. Kennedy issued $4.3 billion in 1963 interest-free far more than the 300 million allowed. He also was murdered for this and other acts against the fascist shadow government. So you have this from the actual paper back then here, and this one. So a lot of these papers, as I said, are from the old Spotlight, the Star of 63. This was the Spotlight. So these are mine here, and this is the letter to Rothschild. And of course, we have to talk about the fast cancer. At the same time as they were doing this to Kennedy. Now, who has read the book by Ed Haslam called Dr. Mary's Monkey, okay? This is an excellent book by the people who at the time were trying to poison Castro. They were trying to poison Castro. So Dr. Mary had a lab. Now, Judith Very Baker, whom I interviewed about 3 years ago when she was here, and as you all know, if you've read my article, while I was talking to her, ground glass caused her to bleed from the mouth, and ground glass was in her sauce on her plate. I had to call the manager after I'd interviewed her. We were halfway through. I said, look, this woman's mouth is bleeding. She says there's glass in her mouth. I said, put your hand in that plate, which he did, and he was terrified. I said, she needs an ambulance now. I'm assuming you're going to pay for this because the woman is not from Canada. And he said, all right. He was frightened to death. She wouldn't go to the hospital unless I got in the ambulance with her because she didn't even trust the ambulance. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go, really, you know? So I said, okay, I will go with you. So she worked in the lab back then when she knew Oswald. Oswald did some work for the lab, so did Ruby, so did Judith Very Baker. And she was very good with mice. She was a child science prodigy, won all the science fairs, and they invited her to go to Tulane and help with these. They didn't tell her exactly what it was for. They wanted her there. So she ended up in the lab with Dr. Mary. Well, at some point, Dr. Mary was found dead in her apartment. She worked with a particle accelerator, which, when you put the virus under it, it accelerates. It becomes fast. The cancer becomes fast, okay? That's what they found out. So at one point, she might have said, look, I don't want to do this. This is not what I planned on doing. And so what they did was, half of all the skin on her body was gone on one side, okay? This can only happen if somebody pushes you in front of one of these things. And you're just seared right to the bone. That's how they found her in her apartment, because whoever did it took her back there. And so the book is called Dr. Mary's Monkey, and it's about the people that were working on killing Castro, which they never did, back in the same time in around Dallas, okay, as all this was going on. And Oswald knew about these people. He didn't actually work in the lab, but he knew Judith, and they hung out together for quite a while. So she comes back and tells this story, and like I say, they never forget. And she has a family reunion. They all come to the hotel, really nice place. I'm invited there, my son was invited, and everybody's having a wonderful time, drinking and eating. Of course, all the dishes were different because it was a very nice place. And she got hers last, and we're talking way up at the head of the table. And nobody even realized for a few minutes what had happened. So when the manager came in, and all, she had to run to the ambulance and all of that. So yeah, so they never forget, doesn't matter when it happened, okay? So That's true,
I can
okay?
attest to that.
Okay, so the first privatization means, and we're going to talk about why this is so important, the presidents are killed. McKinley was killed, you've got it all down here. But after they had that trial, they said, we can't have that again. A trial with real names? We can't do that again. So look, the next time, here I've got them here. The next time, and since that very day with Lincoln, he was in 65, McKinley 1901, let's have just crazy, loony people. One crazy lone assassin. We got to do this every time now. That was the only time there was a trial and the real people were named. So from then on, with McKinley, 1901, Garfield, 1881, they all had, including Kennedy, they all had a nutcase, a lone something or other. This guy was going to be the commie, the lone commie.
Was that how they started World War II, was it?
What?
Was that how they started World War I when that guy murdered some Duchess? Was he
No,
alone?
that's another subject. You'll have to come to the class on war. You're thinking of the guy that was shot in the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in late. This is about Kennedy. Kennedy, okay? One of these lectures is on war. Anyway, the reason why all these presidents were killed, let's be very blunt here. Okay? It's a crime against humanity to put interest on new money. It hasn't done anything. It's new. It's just been printed. It has not performed, okay? If you put interest on money that's not performed, you're putting a burden on humanity. And these creeps, that's what they do, okay? So it means this. Whoever prints the money, as I said before, prints the news. Yes. Whoever prints your money prints the news. You haven't got a hope in hell of finding out anything important that's true. No hope at all. All right? And anybody who goes over the line on that, if enough people are listening, then they get punished, okay? So, when they say the money supply is privatized, they mean it's been robbed. Privateers, privatization comes from privateer. Back in the time of what, Elizabeth the First, if you saw the pirate flag, the skull and bones, you knew your ship was going to be robbed. You're all going to be thrown overboard. Everything you have is going to be robbed. That's a privateer. And now they're corporations. They don't have to be on a boat. This is what they do. Look, they're over in Iraq. They got all the oil, Libya, 400 tons of gold, plus oil. Now they're in Syria. Come on. Oil, oil, oil. And these creeps, these idiots, they've got wars and people dying so they can get the oil. If we keep on using oil, we're dead anyway.
Yeah.
We're dead meat. They're so stupid and so greedy that they're having wars over oil, which we shouldn't be using anyhow. So stupidity comes from greed. I don't care if you have an IQ of 160, whatever. If you're greedy, you will lose it fast, okay? There's no logic with greed. So our money supply's been robbed. It's robbed now. We can't use our own bank, even though we have the same charter. It's being robbed. So these people, in order to keep robbing the money supply, running it, making the laws, owning the planet, they own it. And people are very fearful of them because they have killed other presidents. And they got so worried when Lincoln actually had a trial and they named these people. They got together after that and they said, what we have to do from now on Doesn't matter who gets killed, there's got to be some patsy, and he's got to be nuts. Some loony, and this is how they said it to themselves. They said, because if it's a lone, mad, idiotic assassin, there's no shame on the country. That's not political. It's just a crazy, single guy. So he takes the whole burden for everybody. Oh, what? There's no change in America. It's just a nut. A nut did it. So nothing's going to happen. There's going to be nothing different happening after that. So that's what it is now. Every president since Lincoln, it's been some kind of nutcase. Whoever they picked. That's what's done. They didn't have mind control back then, so that was a little harder because there was a lot of money, $180,000 back then, in a bank in Montreal. You could have a little party at the Bank of Montreal saying, remember when you guys kept that money for those killers? Remember? The money was in your bank way back then. So that's what happens. So the first scarcity, when they tell us we can't afford this and that, the first lie is that money is scarce. No, it isn't. But see, this is control. This is controlling you. It's the biggest control in the world. Then to go robbing everybody else's oil, they had to say, oil is scarce. No, it isn't. Neither is money. It's all a lie. And people go to these universities and they're brought up, they think they're studying economics. They're studying the financial scam.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to do with economics. Economics is saving, finance is lending. Lending at interest. So our debt, the states owe 17 trillion. Our debt's about 800 billion now. 800 billion because we had our bank for a while. Oh yes, we did. Before 74, when Chrétien sold us down the river, that's why I call him Cretin. And how much of the debt is the actual debt? 5%. Oh, can anyone do better than that? 95% of our debt is interest. Doesn't matter how much we pay on it, it's compounding as I speak. What a racket. What a way to own the whole planet.
Why did Chrétien do that? Did he ever justify it?
Oh, please, have you ever heard Chrétien talk about anything, okay? He went to Trudeau, and he wanted to ask him questions, and Trudeau said, oh no, it's all you. You do whatever you think you should do. So one by one, this is what they did, okay? Don't forget, Chrétien's family is married into the Desmarais. His daughter, I think, is married to the Desmarais' son. Desmarais owns Power Corp. Whoa. And that owns the whole damn country. Desmarais, Power Corp, and Maurice Strong. Do you know what's his name? Oh, God. Who pretended he was with the NDP for a while. You know who I mean. Bob Ray. Power Corp. Bob Ray comes out of there. His brother's in there. Maurice Strong. Every bloody politician. Yes. So then they started in 74. They took all those loans out of our bank. We're paying no interest. And if we paid 1%, it came back to us. We still own every share in that bank. Understand? We own the shares in that bank. And all because Goldman Sachs doesn't like it, Rothschild, they just stopped letting us use our own bank. So we're paying like 40 billion every year in interest. Do you know how many times we paid this loan over? Over and over and over. This is a sin, a crime, a big crime. So they all came out of Power Corp. So Chrétien took the loans that were in our own bank, and he did it one by one, incrementally, that nobody noticed. There was no meeting about this, and he handed them over to the Rothschild Bank. And Goldman Sachs has been running our bank for years. Carney, the last guy was from Goldman Sachs. And they have ruined even states, they ruined Montana. That's what they do.
Cindy, do you also think that Trudeau didn't know about this?
Trudeau let him have a free hand. Trudeau let Chrétien have a free hand. Yes. Okay? He also spent billions on so that we would have kilometers instead of miles, all that garbage. Spent billions to make a statement. Okay, not all intellectuals have common sense. That is very rare. Okay? So Chrétien did that. And now we are going to have a hell of a time trying to get back to our own charter. These crooks will not give up their hold. This is what the war is about, okay? In every one of these countries, they now have the IMF. Iraq was secular. Women dressed, they had careers, they dressed, they drove, everything, secular. Same with Libya. They had their own bank, they had no debts. And every time they go in and they kill the leaders, they rob the resources, and then they put in the private Rothschild bank into that country. Only they say it's the IMF. Just another name, okay? They all go into those countries. Countries are in debt. And in Iraq now, the IMF is lending them money. And they're all killing each other. And they use the religions of fundamentalism as used to create and instigate war. And yes, they won't stop at killing other people. Come on. I have a long list here. So the money is scarce, big lie. Oil is scarce, big lie. Too many people, big lie. All the people on this planet could stand on Rhode Island. All of them. And Rhode Island.
Standing room only.
That's right, but all on Rhode Island, everybody on the planet, not too many people. There's one small group that are using up all the resources and poisoning everybody else. Same group, okay? Here's the proof. In 1929, the huge depression. Let me ask you something. The day before the Big Depression, they had railroads, post office, all kinds of towns, villages, farms, all kinds of wealth the day before. And the day after, people were in bread lines. People were jumping. Why? What was missing? Resources were all there. What, did some big alien ship come down, take all the farms and cities? No. So what was missing? You know what they did? And Friedman admitted this. That liar with his natural unemployment, what a moron. He said, okay, the Fed caused the first depression. All they did was, they pulled back in 1/3 of their loans. Don't forget, their money is based on loans. It's money from thin air. They stopped making loans. They called in the loans that were out there. They wouldn't renew them. Within 3 months, there was only 1/3 of the money to go around the country. Money's like blood. It has to circulate. If you don't have enough and it doesn't circulate, you're dead. So they took away 2/3 of the loans out there. And with all the resources around everybody, okay, people were in bread lines. This lasted 10 years. Till they bought up, when it was down to this, the stock market. The stock market did not cause it with the crash. That's another big lie. But if you have a loan, a mortgage, a business, and it's called in, you can't get one. If you have any money in the stock market, what are you going to do? You're going to haul it out. You need it. You've got to pay off this stuff. So the stock market was not the cause. The pulling in of all the loans was the cause, and that caused the stock market to crash. Because people needed that money to pay their mortgages and businesses, so they had to take their stuff out of the stock market. Then they decided after 10 years, this is all Rothschild, the same goddamn people, decided in 39, okay, now they've had enough. They're down to the bottom. We're going to tell them the war is going to bring them out of the depression. Another big lie. All they did was they started giving the loans out again. And the money went up again. That's all they did. They wanted people to think a war will bring you out of a depression, because they were planning a lot more wars. And they want people to think, whoa, a war economy's good. We won't have a depression as long as people are being killed. Wonderful. This is what they did with the first one. And we've had many since. All they have to do, hey, no, I'm not giving you that loan. So nothing can get done. So we shouldn't be borrowing from these goddamn murderers. This planet is in a terrible, terrible mess. Because we haven't got enough people like Kennedy, and you know why we haven't. Everybody is scared because they know they will kill. They will kill. Somebody asked Rothschild once, when's the best time to buy? He said, when the blood runs in the streets. And that's what will happen if people decide they don't want to take any more of this robbery, thievery, lies, and murder. And Kennedy knew all that. He and his brothers were educated. People go to school now, they come out of school, high school, please, you're on the level of a guinea pig if you only went to high school, because you could learn in 1 year what they teach in 4. But why am I going for 4 years for this crap? And the universities now are on lockdown. You're not going to hear what I'm saying tonight in any economics course. They've got books like doorstops, full of jargon. That's another thing. If you have enough jargon, nobody's going to understand it. That's why they want everybody who talks about economics and their eyes glaze over. Oh, economics, it's so difficult. Oh, God, it's worse than physics. This is what they want people to think, and it's quite simple. So this is what or who. These are the people. You've got this one here, wanted for crimes against humanity. These are magazine covers, for God's sake. I'm not making these things up. Here's another great one here. Look, when Arafat was poisoned, which they proved he was because they dug him up, polonium, radioactive, the market cheers the death of Arafat. Whoa.
Who?
Arafat,
No, who
the
cheered it?
Palestinian leader.
Who cheered it?
The market.
The market. You mean like the oil market?
No. Listen, this is being filmed, so you can't ask me questions in the middle of it. I'm being filmed, okay? So the market, Wall Street, cheered that Arafat was dead, okay? That was a good thing. The same, and then Lindbergh. Now Lindbergh, the famous guy who flew the Atlantic, his father was a congressman. And when it happened about the money they got in, the Fed, 1913, he gave a speech and he wrote a book. I have the book, telling everybody who these people are. We're all going to be poor. We're going to be killed. He had a book on it. So here we go back again. Time doesn't matter. So Lindbergh flew the ocean, got famous, everybody loved him. He was married, he had a little boy. When the little boy was 2 years old, they put a ladder up to his bedroom window. They lived in the country. They killed the little boy, dragged him out of the house, killed him, and somebody named Kaufman went to court for that.
Hoffman.
Whatever. Went to court for that. So the market cheers, they don't care. They will get even, and they got even with the one in Congress by killing his grandson, okay? Same with John, all right? 3 years old, saluting his father's dead, he's 3. His mother, now here's something else people don't know. You know what they said about her after? I mean, most people never have a good word to say about anybody, okay? She ended up married to, who was the ship owner?
Onassis.
Onassis. Because And they said, oh, how can she do that? It's only big. He had a deal with Kennedy. He said, Kennedy said to Onassis, you live outside of my country. You have money and clout. If anything happens to me, I want you to take care of my wife and my children. They made a deal. And they were safe as long as they were out there in that area, away from America. She goes back to America and gets an editing job with some publishing firm. I forget, one in New York. And she tells her son, never go up in a small plane. I don't want you to learn. I don't want you to fly. Don't do it. Because she's already, her memoirs are hidden. You won't get those, forget it. Her journals, her diary, forget it, please. She knew what was going to happen. So when they were older, she comes back. She gets a cancer, dies very quickly of it. And she tells her son, don't do that. As soon as she dies, what does he do? Typical of all kids. He learns to fly small plane. Okay? So, he gets married, the wife is pregnant, and they have to go to, I've been there, Martha's Vineyard. They have to go there for something, I forget what, and the wife's sister has to meet them at the plane that day. And she calls them and says she has been held up at work. Now wait a minute, that means they can't leave till dark. So she's called up and said, I'm held up at work, I can't meet you in the afternoon like I said. So think about this. You're some kind of, with some stockbroking firm, something like that. And you are going to meet John Kennedy Jr. and your sister is married to him. And you're at work that afternoon, and you promised them to be there at a certain time, and somebody at that firm, accounting, investment, it was like that, comes along and says, oh no, it's very important. You stay for such and such. Yeah, right. So they keep her there. She doesn't get there till after dark, so they've got to take off after dark. And the plane has not been locked up. The plane is just sitting in the open under a shelter but not locked up. And various people later on are noted as being around the plane. So they take off in the plane, and now I think I put this on your paper. What he actually says, oh here it is. Here you've got it. At 9:30 p.m. Friday, Kennedy radioed the airport, and this is from the old paper, and said he was 13 miles from the airport and 10 miles from the coast, according to the news in Boston. He reportedly said he was making his final approach. Moments later, radar operated by the Federal Aviation Administration showed the plane went into a dive and dropped 1,200 feet in 12 seconds. Now, in his final approach message, Kennedy told controllers at the airport that he planned to drop off his wife's sister and then take off again between 11 and 11:30 for Hyannis Airport. Now, after that happened and the plane went down, and there were people on the beach who saw the plane explode. They saw it blow up, okay? In half, it broke in half, it blew up, and it was C4 put in the wall of the plane. That's why it broke in half. And that's how the plane went down. But afterwards, what did they do? They usually do, not only do they murder the person, but they murder their character as well. Oh, he didn't really know enough about flying. He had 1,000 hours. Everybody that learned with him and knew him said, oh yeah, he was a good pilot, very careful. And so That's what they said, it was his fault, and they said it was foggy. No, it wasn't, it was clear as a bell. There was no fog, okay? The people on the beach saw the plane explode. And why, when they took the bodies up? Nobody could see them, okay, I can understand that after a long time in the water. But then they buried them and they cremated them. I think they cremated all of them. There was no evidence from the plane, nothing. But the people who saw where the plane was and who was hanging around, they said, oh yeah, we think it was an explosive. That's the only thing that could have made the plane explode and break in half. And they even named the explosive. And of course, the wife had to be with them because her son, no. They don't just kill presidents, they kill anything else that's going to come after. They killed Kennedy, then they killed Martin Luther King around the same time. Why'd they kill him? Because he was left alone for years and suddenly made a big speech in Washington about the Fed. But they had to get rid of the Fed. Yeah. So even the people who know, and they know all this, they know that these people are lunatics. They're psychopaths. They will do things that a normal human being wouldn't even think of doing, couldn't live with doing. So I had a friend once, she's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And she said to me, and she's a psychologist, she said to me, but let's face it, Sydney, the people that do all this, they must be smarter than we are. And I said, no, it's what they don't have. They have no conscience. They're not impeded by a conscience, a sense of ethics. They don't have that. Please, if you have no conscience, you have no ethics, you don't even relate to humanity, you can do anything. You'll sleep fine at night. Oh, those people aren't worth it. This is what this is all based on. Let's bleed them dry, give them short, brutal lives, and then they die. Or we'll send them out in one of our wars so that we can get more banks till we have. Now the whole earth has no good central banks left. Do you think we're going to be able to get our bank back? We've got Rocco Galati in court now. We've been there twice. All they do is stall. And I even asked the other people in the group, I said, what chance are we? Not really, but we've got to do it. So, but if everybody did what Iceland did and came down to the court, the whole damn city,
Yes.
or people started on the West Coast and walked all the way to Ottawa and just gathered more people as we went and said, get these robbers and murderers out of here. They're not going to print our money anymore. We don't want it. We don't need it. Get them out. It's resulting in a lot of death, wars we don't want to get their bank in those countries. But they don't really need oil, okay? Let's face it. The U.S. has more oil than any other country in the world. 200 years worth up in the Arctic. Please. It's not really about the oil, okay? The oil now backs their phony dollar. But they can have anything. They'll have anything back the dollar. They've got to have all the countries with the oil. And you have to remember one more important thing. All these countries, the Muslim countries, do not believe in usury. They will not have it. So in 1999, Pakistan said this, and I've got the newspaper article. Starting in 2000, we're going to have an interest-free economy in Pakistan. The Supreme Court. And in the same article, and I have it, it says, the banking community are quite anxious. Community, they called them, not the cartel. Banking community are quite anxious about this. So you know what happened? I said at the time to my sister, what the hell's going to happen over there now? That they got this warning, in another year, whatever, they're going to have an interest-free economy and be able to show the whole world, hey, we can do this. What do you think's going to happen over there now? Well, it's happened. It's happened.
Drone attacks.
That's right. Well, not just drones, the whole thing, the armies, and of course Putin knows who's causing all this. And he was actually bombing the ISIS. People asked me a long time ago, they arrested 2 Israeli generals who were leading ISIS groups. And when you get wounded, you go back to Tel Aviv, to the hospital, okay? ISIS, okay? So that's what's going on there. But they couldn't allow that to happen in Pakistan. I still got the article from back then. So here's how it works, all right? Let's put it this way. This is how their phony economy works. Because their phony money can't support an actual population, they have to keep killing people off. If they don't keep killing people off in wars, their system will fail. Okay? It will fail. So this is what it's based on. Say you have a theater, and the theater has 300 seats. You get tickets, you give out the tickets, people come to see the show, and 200 people get in there, and you say, well, no more rooms, sorry, the rest will have to go home. Now pretend the theater is the economy, okay? The economy. And somebody looks in the door and says, wait a minute, there's 300 seats. Why can't we have all the rest of the people in there? And the guy at the door says, but I only put out 200 tickets. That's what their scam is based on. It's not that we can't afford anything. Yes, we can. But the tickets are our money. Tickets of exchange. That's what money is. They should never have been a commodity. Tickets of exchange. They're just pieces of paper. They should have no extrinsic value, okay? And that's what they do. They're only going to put out ever enough tickets of exchange to keep us poor. So they can tell us, oh, we can't afford a new telescope for space. NASA keeps everything secret. They're horrible, the whole bunch of them. We can't afford this, we can't afford that. Yes, we can. So this is what it's based on. You can only get in if we give you a ticket. And we don't put out 300, we put out 200, so that some of you will always be left out. Homeless, poor, the veterans, whatever. We can't afford you. Well, they have trillions of dollars. I mean, it just boggles the mind. But it's their crummy money. And the other thing, pretend you're in a game of Monopoly, which is a nice little game we played when we were kids on rainy days. So pretend that was supposed to be like the economy. We're all sitting around and we're buying things on Park Place and all this. And over in the corner, which nobody's noticing right now, is a banker. And we're doing the nice little capitalist thing and we're making our money and all this. Every 5 minutes, somebody in that corner comes over and they take half the kitty. What? They're not even in the game. We're thinking, okay, go around the table again. We're making our little, there's nothing wrong with capitalism if we print our own money. That's something a communist will never tell you. It's who owns the money, okay? And next time somebody gets another little property, this guy comes over, half the kitty again. Well, that's what happens in our economy. It's never going to work as long as these parasites are feeding on the blood for no reason, just because they printed the damn money. Like any other Xerox, if you had something printed at the Xerox, a Monopoly game, whatever, you go there to pay them for printing it. And then they say, oh, wait a minute. See all these numbers we printed for you on these? No, you got to pay interest to us now. on these numbers we just put in your Monopoly game. Come on, that's how stupid it is. They're nothing but a bloody glorified Xerox company, but they're gangsters. Yes, I hate to tell you who's running the world and why everything is so horrible and why on their own media, they own the media. Now, oh, there's going to be a terrorist in every town. There's going to be, oh, will I go out the door today? They're just packing it on like they never know when to stop, okay? They have no taste. Let's put it that way. They don't know when to stop. They always go overboard until they get ridiculous, okay? So this is another thing they do. If you think you're going to win on the stock market, oh please, figure it out after 20 years. You're lucky to break even, but probably you won't. So this is what they do in the stock market. This is why Wall Street paid for the Russian Revolution. Wall Street set up Hitler, a lot of them. The Standard Oil, those people, yeah, here's money. So this is what they do. A corporation, all the other corporations go to the biggest corporation, the banks. This is how it works. Banks are right at the top. I think I gave you the paper, the 8 families who own all the big banks. 8 families. They're intermarried, 300 people, they know each other, and they're up there. So a corporation wants to expand or start up, they have to go for loans. Now this is what they do. If they say to the corporate guy, well, you know, we don't think it's feasible, we're not going to lend you anything right now. The stocks go down. The stock market is rumors, okay? It's a big casino, and it's rumors. Psh, 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 psh. You know, it's idiotic, but they're running it. They're running the scam. So the word gets out, oh my God, they were refused a loan. There's something wrong. The stocks go down. When they go right down, these people here buy them up. And they say to the corporate guy, you know what, I think we will give you that loan. They bought all the stocks when they're low. They get the loan, the stocks go way up again, so they create their own windfall. They can bring corporations up and down whenever they like. Of course they manipulate the stock market. And you, the nice little guy, here's a little package, mutual funds. Mostly based on killing poor people. I mean, look into them sometime. And you pay into that. But this is what they do. There's no way. The house always wins. Understand? So you're lucky to break even, okay? And another thing they do, so they can tell the country, oh, we don't have any assets. We don't have that much. But don't worry about it. The country's going bankrupt. You know how they work that one? And Martin did it too, okay? That year that he wanted to get elected, he balanced the budget. Oh my God, Martin balanced the budget. Everybody was, oh my God, he's brilliant. Let me tell you how he did it. So when the government builds a bridge, if we build a bridge, that's an investment, okay? We're going to use the bridge for maybe 50 years. Each year we're going to depreciate it. Say it's 50 million. Each year we're going to depreciate it $1 million until we get all the way down. We spent the 50. The bridge has had the bun. Build another one. That's called an investment. And it gets depreciated as time goes on. All right? We don't do that. You know how the bankers work it? But they're running our economy into the dust. This is what they say. Okay, we built the bridge, and we're going to put it here in the books, assets. It's an asset. And we're going to list it at $1. Don't believe me? Look it up. Then the 49,999,999 goes into the deficit. whoa. Remember them talking, the deficit is getting higher and higher. They put an investment into the deficit because they call this investment an expense. Lie, big lie. Say that you bought a house, you had $50,000 in the bank, put it down on a house, you move in. You have a place to live, you have an investment, your equity is building up. But when you fill out your income tax, you write to them and you say, I had $50,000 expenses this year. Oh, please, I shouldn't have to pay any tax. Wait a minute, you made an investment. It's going to have equity. You're saying we have to pay for your expenses, so you would never get away with it. But the government does. So you know what Martin did? His father must be spinning like a top. He was an honest guy. So Martin, all he did was he comes over here to the deficit, and like there's thousands of assets in here that have been called expenses wrongly. He takes them out of the deficit, puts them over here in the assets, and whoopee, it's balanced. Oh my God, he balanced it. You're an accountant, you
That's
understand.
right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Oh, what government is crazy and stupid enough to list their investments as expenses? Listen, you people, none of us is a rocket scientist, but I ask you, get involved with monetary reform. And our motto is, without monetary reform, there is no reform. And monetary reform, when it comes right down to it, is saying to these people, take your parasitical crowd, and you're not printing anything for us anymore. What do you think would happen if enough people went to the government and said, we're sick of this? And under Reagan, when they built the deficit up, listen, they admitted it. They said, oh yeah, under Reagan, we did this. We put our assets in to make the deficit really big, because when you tell people a deficit's huge, then that means we can make social cuts. We don't have to do housing. We don't have to do health care. We don't care about the veterans. We've got a huge deficit. We can't afford to help these people. Yes?
Didn't Linda McQuaid get her wrist slapped writing about this 20 years ago or something?
No, Linda, I've known her for a long time. She doesn't mention the Bank of Canada anymore, and I asked her once why. She received a threat. She did columns on it, books about it.
She was also writing about the illusion of death.
Yeah. We don't owe these people a goddamn nickel. 5%. Do you know how many times we have paid off the national debt? And listen, this is the most horrible. It's almost like a nightmare. If I think about this at night, I can't sleep. So I put it out of my mind. I read an Agatha Christie or something when murders were just one at a time, you know? Like, they come on the news all the time, and they'll say, well, of course, we can't do that because we have to pay down the debt. They never say pay off. That's impossible, because we have to pay down the debt and the deficit. And everybody's sitting out there watching the nicely groomed news announcers pretending they know something about what they're talking. No, they don't. They're just saying the words. They haven't got a clue. And the people out there never ask, to whom do we owe this enormous debt? Does anyone ever ask that? We don't owe it to the government. That's us. The government is in debt to someone. Nobody even thinks that way. They think that debt's been there since the planet's formed. That's what they're taught. That debt. Oh, well then, better say we can't have that, we can't have this. Get people, euthanasia will help pay the debt, won't it? We get those older people gone as soon as possible. The ones who paid into all this, who are now called useless, and myself as a volunteer, 90% of seniors are volunteers, like me, doing something, okay? So this is all a murderous scam and is perpetrated by a very small group of people who are psychopathic. They gave a test once. They didn't tell the corporate leaders what the test was really about. And they answered all the questions, and they all passed with flying colors. And you know what the test was about? How many characteristics you have of a psychopath. They all passed with flying colors. They're heading corporations. Yes, more weapons. Yes, more mind control. Yes, let's kill off Iraq. War is the biggest business on the planet, other than religions, okay? I did that last week. But as Michio Kaku says, we are in the swamp of fundamentalism, and these clever people are setting all the maniac fundamentalists are now, they were okay before. Like Saddam and Tito in Yugoslavia, he kept them in little compartments. He kept them separated, not fighting. So when they got rid of people like him and Saddam and what's his name, Libya, Gaddafi, they went in and had him ripped apart. Saddam, who was their friend and worked for them for years, didn't win. He didn't win over Iran, so he had to go, okay? Then he said, no, you're not, I'm not privatizing my oil. He had to go. Then he said, I might do euros. Doesn't matter. Same people own the euro. Come on. Okay? Who cares what he did? But anyway, they wanted rid of him because he might write a book. Oh, hey, they don't want the people they've used writing books. They only want these small-time, brainless twits like the guy last night. They love books by people like that, and then people buy them and read them. Oh yeah, that makes sense, okay? Not to anyone with an IQ over 80, but anyway, this is what's done. So this is how they work the market. This is how they lie to the government lies to you. And now I just want to read you this. This is great. About the bailouts, okay? In 1999, Congress, okay, they're nothing but a bunch of ass kissers, all right? Congress right now, they will just do what they are told. And in 99, they abolished the Glass-Steagall Act. Now, you know what that means? Let me tell you briefly. They abolished it. It said the banks cannot do anything but banking. The banks cannot be in the insurance industry. They can't be in this industry, that. They have to stick to banking. And they got rid of that. They got rid of that act, okay? So then the banks started, as I say, they don't know when to quit. The big casino, they joined the big casino and they started, so then they made so many mistakes, okay? And they were told they could increase their debt from 12 to 1 to 100 to 1. You know what that means? The banks now are lending out 400 times what they have. Oh, isn't that great? 400 times what they have. Well, what the hell does that mean to us? If you have any money in the bank, and I said this just before the bailout. Some people listened, some people didn't. Two of my friends lost around 100,000 apiece. I said, if you have anything in the bank, you've got your debts paid, buy a little condo, rent it out, get your money out of the bank. If you've always wanted a Maserati, buy it. Because at least after the big thing, when things go up again, you can sell it. You can drive it, you can sell it. Don't leave your money in the bank. Well, that's going to be coming up again soon, okay? They had the bailout. Wait a minute. They do anything they want. They break every rule they want. The rules are for you, not for them. So they had the bailout, and one guy in Congress said, I'm not eating this cow patty. Let's just say we're not going to bail you out. Let it go. Well, after 2 days, they bailed them out. So they got like 70, I don't know how many billions. But you don't know that we're going to pay interest on that billion bailout. All that money they got bailouts, we're going to pay the interest on that. You got that?
It was 700 billion
Oh, was it? Okay.
in one stroke. And then they had been at about 15 trillion after that.
We bailed them out. God knows what threats, what coercion, we don't know. But at first the Congress said, no, we're not going to do it. I wonder what they would have said what Iceland did. No, get out, we don't want it. Get out, we're jailing you and you. Some of them took off to England, some of them were jailed, you know. Because in Iceland, it's totally cohesive. There is nobody in Iceland but the people who've lived there for thousands of years. They all think alike, they all got together. One big brain. Nobody dissented. If you have a lot of people that are in your country and they're afraid of being deported, they're not going to get involved in anything that could get them deported. Do you see any new immigrants in here? I have a friend who comes here, she's black, she said, Sydney, I have all these friends that are afraid to come to your class because they might go on a list. But she's come all these years. So in Iceland, everybody thought as one. They decided right away. They got out in the streets banging the pots and pans. They didn't stop. And they said, okay, you have to go. We don't want it anymore. Get out. And so many are going to jail, okay? That's what they did. Could we do that? I don't know if we could do that, okay?
The other problem is nobody in Canada knows what's going on. The Canadian citizens don't know.
They're not political. They pay no attention.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really sorry. I was in America half my life, so I come back here and I am not typical, okay? So anyway, I came back. So these guys got the bailout. So you know what we've got now? Now let's give you another date here. This is wonderful. This is accelerating, okay? So 2004, they could get like, put out as much money, and they call it, now I love the jargon. I love the jargon, quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. Easing of what? Not our pain, that's for sure. Quantitative, okay, certain numbers, easing. No, it's overprinting. The old word from the 30s was at the Versailles, the conference at Versailles, they said to the Americans, you can have the reserve dollar if you promise not to overprint. Okay, that means no quantitative easing, no overprinting, and gold can never go beyond $35 an ounce. They promised that back then. How much is gold worth now? I don't know, 2001. It goes up and down, but around 2000. And they are printing. I told you the story of the goldsmith, right? You people here have heard that story. So they're overprinting. Just honest, it's just, they're going to disappear up their own backsides. That's how bright they are, okay? Let's wait for that day. So they got the bailout, all right? Then they had foreclosure gate, 2008, 2010. Half the people in America lost their little homes. Lost them. That was called foreclosure gate. They seized millions of houses for non-payment with false documents, okay? False judgments. 50 million US citizens are now living in tents, begging for governmental food stamps. 2009 to 2013, okay? Many countries are on the verge or in the middle of an economic collapse because these people have nothing to do with economics. It's finance, okay? Not economics. They don't want to save anything, okay? So in Canada in 2013, the economic action plan. Now listen to this. The economic action plan in this country, it's right here. It's called it's legal now, bail in. Bail in. So I'm saying, if you have any money in the bank, it's legal now to go into your account and take some out. Whatever they think is a good amount, okay? In other words, it's not the ordinary guy. It's something like, if you have over 100 and some odd thousand, could even be 200,000, like my friends who lost 100,000. They each had about 300 in there, each lost 100. Because I told them back then, buy something now. Just buy it, keep it, that's it. Don't leave your money, get something real. That's why real estate's called real estate, okay? Nothing to do with paper. So now that we have the bail in, and it's legal right here in Canada, okay? So the European Union is going to pass a similar law. What does it mean? Now listen to this about Cyprus. Up to 80% of the deposits over 100,000 euros at the second largest bank in Cyprus has now been confiscated. These people will never see their money again. Pay attention, okay? So, since the 2008 subprime crisis, yeah, there's been a recession. It's all over the planet, a recession, okay? And it's all because there is interest on every bloody thing you buy. It might not say on the ticket, including interest or 3% interest, but in every commodity, whatever you buy now, there's interest on it. Okay, that's how it is. So, the slowdown, by early 2011, oil had increased by 100%. That's the price. Now it's gone down to nothing. But I'll tell you why that is. They want to ruin Russia. Russia depends on its oil profits. So they cut down the oil price right down, what is it, 45 or something now for a barrel or something, to ruin Russia. But they didn't ruin Russia. Putin came on, he made a speech, he said, we will come through this. We will come through it. And so now it's blown back on them. Okay, other places, well, Alberta, that's not really oil. That's tar. Anyway, gold by 85% increased, cotton by 80%. So the long term, now listen to this. This is what I told you. This is in dialogue. They print some of my poems. I have one here tonight about the Fed, which you might like to hear. Okay, the long term, here's what they're saying is causing it. The long-term collusion, they're in bed together, between governments and big money is becoming obvious. Okay, why would big money want to bring us to our knees? Because human consciousness is rising exponentially, and is about to discover, we're on the verge of actually understanding what is going on and who is killing us. We're on the verge of that. This is very dangerous to them. So now their scheme has to bring everybody down so that they will be so involved in surviving only that I don't have time to think about it. I have to put food on the table, the kids are hungry, this is what they want. And there's no excuse. Do you know how much food we wasted last year in North America? We wasted billions of tons of food. Billions. We could feed the whole damn world with what we waste in America. Oops, breakfast is cut off now at McDonald's. I went in there once in Florida. I just want a couple of rolls. Sorry, they're all in the bin, garbage bin. So now the smart people are turning that into alcohol and putting it in their cars. Oh yeah, that's another thing they're not telling you up here. You can run your car half gasoline, half alcohol. They're making the alcohol out of garbage, 25 cents a gallon. And people in California are using it. And it gets your engine clean. Why don't we hear about it up here? What the hell? Are we some experiment? Let's see how stupid you can make all these people so they don't know anything. Keep it from them. Look it up on the net. It's under a website called Alcohol Can Be a Gas, which is true. And it's very clean and it doesn't make any pollution. Understand? Okay, that's one solution. Look it up. That's a website. They want everything in here that's going to make you poor and sick, okay? This scheme is part of depopulation, I told you. Their scheme will only work if the population is brought right down, okay? Because it's such a horrible, stupid, not even mathematical, not even. Has anyone here heard of Douglas? Major Clifford Douglas, economist, back in 1932. In Congress, they wanted to put in his system. He had a great system. He was an engineer and a mathematician, and he knew what was happening with money. So we will be talking about him. Somebody let me know what time it is, so I know I'm not.
8:30.
What is it?
8:30.
Okay, can you give me another 20 minutes? Okay. So, now listen. So what you have to do, now, I said this back before 2008. They said what I said. Look, listen to me. If you have any money in the bank at all, pay off whatever debts you've got. If you've got a mortgage, pay it off. If you don't have any debts, think of something you can get that's your property. Either invest in a small condo and rent it out to some student. Better than nothing, better than a sharp stick in the eye, which is what you could get. And if you have enough money and you've always wanted a certain trip, spend it on something you really have always wanted, whether it's a thing or going on a trip. But I'm warning you, this is not going to get better until they are thrown out. So until we get enough people with some testicular fortitude, okay, then we're not going to get rid of them, all right? That's what's going to happen. So, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of history here before we, and I think I put that poem in here. Did I? Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, you got it here. Okay, so you've already read it. It's in the magazine Dialogue next to Money is Metaphysical, which you all know. Money is Metaphysical is just numbers. So don't listen to these bastards. Okay? Now, while I'm here, what did I do with that other? I know it's in here. I had it in my fat little hands just a minute ago. Oh, okay. I'm just going to end it with this to prove to you how many people back then knew. Did anyone here ever see the movie The Wizard of Oz? You've all seen it as a kid. You've all seen it, right? Okay, I'm going to explain it. It was written by a man called Frank Baum, B-A-U-M, in 1900. He'd written many other books, and this is the one they made the movie out of. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it was really about, okay? It was like Alice in Wonderland is a satire on real life and politics. This one was a satire on this here, okay? These people. And They made it into a wonderful movie for a child, just like Alice in Wonderland. But by the same token, Alice in Wonderland, one of them, The Looking Glass, was about a chess game, and the other one, I forget what that was about, but it was all having to do with mathematics. Professor wrote it, okay? So, The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, she gets out of Kansas. The old bag wants the little dog, Toto. You know the scene. And then there's a horrible, what is it? A tornado, and the house goes up in the air, and she lands in the land of Oz. Okay, what does Oz stand for? Who knows? What does Oz mean?
Oh.
It stands for ounces. Got it? Ounces. That's the land of Oz. The yellow brick road. What are the bricks made of?
Gold.
That's right. That's the gold. The yellow brick road. Now, Dorothy in the original story does not have red shoes. Dorothy has silver shoes. The shoes she's wearing are silver. Just like the Kennedy money based on silver. Okay? The silver shoes, and the silver shoes are walking on the yellow brick road, and they're following it to Oz. What it means is silver is what you use. It's way above gold. It's more useful. She had silver shoes. They changed them to red shoes, okay? Silver. And the little dog, Toto, that the witch wanted, the witch with the green face, what does Toto mean?
Everything.
That's right, it's Latin. It's a Latin word meaning everything. So when the old witch says, I'm taking Toto, in Latin if you say in toto, you mean everything. In toto, that's the name of the dog. And the old witch that has these flying monkeys or whatever they are, she wants everything in toto. That's what it means, everything you own. And she represents those people, okay? Now, when she meets the scarecrow. The scarecrow represents the farmers who are absolutely ruined. They're the first ones to be ruined all the time because he hasn't got a brain. You remember the song with the thoughts, I'd be thinking I could be another Lincoln if I only had a brain. That's the scarecrow.
Straw man?
Yes, the scarecrow, the straw man. Well, that's what it means. No brains, but in this he represents the farmers, not the straw man. Now the Tin Man, who's such a nice guy and he can't bend because he's all rusted, the Tin Man. In the film, the Tin Man is such, oh, if I only had a heart. Now who's the Tin Man with no heart? I'll tell you who it is. If you're a sheriff, somebody asks you what you're doing, what do you do for a living? I push tin. I'm a sheriff. I'm with the law. I'm pushing tin. It's the badge. So the film doesn't say that either. He's made out to be, but he has no heart. So he's the guy that when you can't pay anymore, he comes and takes all your furniture out of your home, throws it on the lawn. That's who it is. The Tin Man. He's a guy with the badge who's going to take all you own when you can't pay. Get the book by Frank Baum. I mean, you'll know exactly when you go through it. So she has the silver shoes. Now, what else is in there that we need to know?
Lion.
Oh, the lion. The cowardly lion represents the politician. Okay? And, no, truly. And they had a certain one in mind. I think it was that guy, he was a huge orator. He had a big mouth. He was a great, now maybe his name is in here. But he was a politician, a populist. Oh, where the hell's his name? Okay, I don't think his name is not in here. But anyway, he is a politician. You know, I'm the king of the forest and all that. So That's what that was about. The Cowardly Lion. He's called the Cowardly. That's my word for a politician. They'll say anything they're told to say. As, what's his name said in ancient Rome, Cicero said 2,000 years ago, politicians are not born, they're excreted. He said that, okay? That's what he said about them. So, The Wizard of Oz, if you get the actual book, I'm sure they have it out again, that's what it's about. The bankers, what happens to people under the bankers, that's what it is. So, I'll just give you one last little bit here. When did this start, okay? In Babylon, if you borrowed money and you couldn't pay it back, your family, your children and you had to be the slaves of the person that you couldn't pay back. Oh yes, actual slaves. But debt is still slavery. It's just invisible now. Just invisible. Ask yourself, can you go to the Riviera this winter? Ask yourself that. And why can't you? Okay? You're contributing to society and all of that. So then Caesar, there were two really nice men called Gracchus before Caesar. And they wanted to give some of the poor, divide up the land and give some of the poor land. 133 BC, they were both murdered by the moneylender. Julius Caesar, 48 BC, he made his own coins. He said, no, I'm making my own coins. He built all kinds of public buildings. He took care of the people. They loved him. He was stabbed in the bloody Congress, Senate, whatever, by the bloody senators in there, stabbed because he did that. Charles I was killed off by Cromwell and the bankers that came in from Holland. Charles I, they set him up. You've stolen from the treasury. Killed him. Okay? He was beheaded. Okay? Then the bankers came in. Jackson, 1835, they didn't get him. I loved Jackson. Okay? Jackson was wonderful. There's a book about him by Schlesinger that's amazing called The Days of Jackson. What he knew, Old Hickory, okay? 2 guns, they misfired. Garfield, 1881, said the same thing. Congress is going to issue the money. Congress, and they're going to value the money, dead. Anybody that said it in their inauguration speech, you can read them, about the money, Congress, dead. McKinley, well, dead. They didn't like him either because they blew up the Maine themselves so they could have a war with Spain. And he said, wait a minute, we don't want to have a war. Let's investigate who really blew up the boat. Dead. And that's happening today. Let's investigate who really did it. All the false flags. Lincoln, the only one where they had to go to court. McFadden, who was head of the banking in 1913, they killed him, shot at him once, tried to poison him at a banquet, but a doctor there pumped his stomach. Then they poisoned him again at another banquet, and there was no doctor there, so they killed him off in 33. And in 32, Lindbergh's grandson killed. John Kennedy, 63. Bobby Kennedy, 68. John Jr., 1999. And Arafat, 2004, was poisoned in France. Oh no, polonium. They were giving it to him for months. But he died in France. So who? Ask yourself, what? These brainless, these killers, that they're mind controlled now, but even back then, they may not even have fired that shot. Understand? The media, their media, like the guy last night, he's owned. He's owned. Not only does he have to shut up, he has to lie. Now, every anniversary now, well, Nori, come on, we all know who Nori works for. His show's a joke, okay? Once in between the witches and the medieval and the Antichrist and all this crap. Occasionally has somebody good on, but basically it's propaganda. And whole Nori thing is propaganda. Maybe twice a month they get a genuine scientist or some, not political. They'll do that. Anything political, lies, okay? So that's what's happening now. So I might, should I inflict on you this poem? I wouldn't mind having it on the tape because I would like other people to hear it. This was put in Dialogue magazine, which is a very good magazine, goes across Canada. And here's how it goes. So, Ben Franklin, this is the story of the Fed. You can get them out, look at it. Ben Franklin came to England where the streets were paved with the poor. Ben Franklin came to England, he looked and his heart was sore. The people asked him how he fared. He said, we're doing well. That's over in America, because they have their own money. But why is it that London looks a living hell? The Bank of England chains us all. For bread they give us stone. And though we toil from dawn till dusk, nothing do we own. The Bank of England welcomed Ben. They hearkened to his tale of democracy, colonial scrip, a people's bank that could not fail. Their appraising squint became a frown. They said farewell, then sat them down. What cursed angel told him this? Our schemes are all for naught. We've sold our very souls for gold. We won't share what we've got. The banker's fist came pounding down. Honest money was taken away. In the colonies, a land of plenty, there was the devil to pay. The streets were quiet, the silence of sorrow. Carpenters today were beggars on the morrow. Nothing left to pay with, nothing left to borrow. With orchards full, no one could pick. Forest to infinity, no one could cut a stick. Fathers shamed by penury, children getting sick. Bankers turned back to their accounting. No intuition struck their eye of anger and frustration mounting that aught had gone awry. They wined and dined from golden plates supported by the poor until the wild colonials won the Revolutionary War. But the bankers' bloodlust never lacked. They crept and coerced when democracy was slack. Some presidents fought back. Jackson and Lincoln staunchly led the attack. Then in 1913, the government was sacked. Woodrow Wilson on his deathbed bemoaned his crime. What ignorance, what naivety, what unmitigated nerve. He cursed himself roundly for the Federal Reserve. They entered so quietly on a calm Christmas night, and in the new year, gone were the rights of interest-free money for an honest day's toil, replaced with indenture, and the bankers' smiles were oil. Since then their net has circled the globe. Now every nation is caught by the throat. With Ben Franklin, Jackson, and Lincoln as well, I say from my heart, damn the bankers to hell.